one more time with you.
Yes.
My name is Jim Benson. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Oklahoma Planning Commission. I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of February 16th, 2017, posted legally as February 10th, 2017. Could we have a roll call?
The members of the Oklahoma County Planning Commission is Mrs. Irene Martin, Mr. Charles DeFuria, Mr. James Benson, Mr. David Ritchie, Mr. David Martin, and Commissioner Ray Vaughn.
We'll now go to the agenda meeting, item number 4, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, January 21st, 2017. Are there any additions, or subtractions, or corrections? If not, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes. Approved. Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Martin, Mr. DeFuria, Mr. Benson,
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie. Okay. Mr. Martin, and Commissioner Vaughn.
We now go to agenda item number 5, a deferred item, discussion and possible action to approve or deny preliminary plat of the Meadows at McCarthy Park, PT 2015-01. We received a written request from the applicant to defer hearing on this item until April 20th, 2017 meeting.
That is correct. They're in the process of finishing off their agreements with Oklahoma City as far as water is concerned, and deciding on other utilities in the area. And they asked that we be given a 2-month deferment so they could get all that in order. In order for us to review these plans, we have not seen the plans ourselves, so we need to review those before they come before this board.
But how long has this item been active?
Oh, this started in 2016, of course, but they're on the verge. They have presented us original plans and everything, and things have changed with the contracts and stuff like that. So, you know, there's someone here to speak to it, and the reason why they were calling for their
Like that, or maybe just do the other vote? And there are no questions. If there's no questions, I will take a motion to approve or deny the written request from the applicant to defer the hearing on this item to April 20th. I'll make that motion. If we have a roll call,
Mrs. Martin, Mr. DeFuria, Mr. Benson,
yes.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Mr. Martin, and Commissioner Vaughn.
We now go to agenda item number 6, deferred item, discussion of possible action to approve and deny the final plat of Poynton Oakwood Station, FD 2016-03. Again, we received a written request from applicant to defer the hearing until the April 20th meeting.
Yes, we have received a letter asking for the April meeting on this problem. Their situation has not changed since the previous time.
Is there anyone here or is there any questions from any of the board? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve or deny this request.
They are having some problems getting the well, I couldn't hear what you said. They're having some problems with their Mylar, the final plat that's to be filed. The abstract company don't want to sign off on it until they clear up some ownership problems with the property.
Is there any more discussions or questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the request for deferral, item number 6.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. DeFuria?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
And Commissioner Vaughn.
Aye.
We now go to item number 7, a third item.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Joe Blau came in and said that, they're trying to keep the minutes down at the office because there's nobody down there. Marquita's down there trying to hear us. So we need to make sure we speak into the mics, and is everybody's light on, the green light? You might pull it right up to your face and speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for explaining that to us. We're now on item 7, deferred item, discussion and possible action to approve, deny a zoning change from AA Agriculture and Rural Residential District to a planned unit development, PUD 2016-04. Staff report.
Yes, this is an item that has been deferred previously until they could have had a chance to talk with their surrounding property owners, and they're here now to present their application as originally was planned.
Any more questions of staff or any questions of staff? If so, do we have someone to speak for this proposition here? Would you please, I guess, speak very loudly in the microphone so our recorder can have your name and address and put you down on the minutes properly?
Will do. My name is Jason Spencer. I'm with Craft and Toll, 300 Point Parkway Boulevard, Yukon, Oklahoma, and I'm here with the owner and applicant. The application in front of you is to rezone approximately 15-acre tract from the current zoning of agricultural and rural residential to a PUD that would allow agricultural and rural residential along with a wedding and events venue. The wedding events venue, typical events would consist of weddings, dinners, picnics, holiday office parties, and such. The property is bordered on the north and west by Bluff Creek, and then there's some adjacent property owners to the east and south, and the owner has been working with those neighbors over the past several weeks, and that's why we've deferred the item in order to address their concerns, and glad to say that it's our understanding that they are now in support of this application. Like I said, the purpose of this PUD will be then to basically add in the additional use of a wedding and events venue on the property. The owner is here, and we would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions? Mr. Vaughn.
I saw on the restrictions here that you're saying your maximum capacity is 225 individuals and 12 parking spaces. Can you tell me how you do that?
Well, and that would be for the largest event. Most events are typically smaller than that. We're basing the parking off of the events venue, the barn, although obviously some of the events do occur and utilize some of the outside area. The intent of this property and what kind of makes it unique is an open space, a rural setting, and trying to avoid basically putting in a whole bunch of hard surface paving that would take away from that. At current times, when they've had larger crowds, they've been parking in a field, and that's worked fine for them.
If it isn't raining.
That's correct.
So, are you planning on putting any? I understand hard surface, but how about some gravel or something like that? Or you? Yeah, I don't know. You're going to run into a situation certainly at some point where the parking is going to be an issue. It seems.
So, and that's something that we could entertain. But up to this point, because I guess as the staff report indicated, the wedding events venue's been open, and they've had some quite a few events there, and they haven't had a problem up to this point. And we're here trying to bring the zoning in and make sure that we're in compliance with that.
So you're catching up on the zoning?
That's correct, sir.
You've been operating without zoning? Okay. The house that sits between the barn and the main road, is that owned by the applicant as well?
That is not. That's one of the neighboring property owners who the applicant's been in discussions with, and to our knowledge, they're in support of the application.
They're in support of the application?
Yes, sir.
Interesting. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question, please.
Sir.
Tell me about the driveway. It says the existing driveway. Are we relocating that drive?
There is a plan and agreement, in the works. It's actually been agreed upon that they are gonna relocate that drive over to the west. And what you've got, and I believe the property owner is here, for the property to the east, and then that piece that's to the east of the house on the south, there's two portions there under the same ownership. And so the current driveway splits through that property. So this would move the property, or move the driveway further to the west and allow that property to be together.
Could you please point that out on the map?
Absolutely. This large tract and this smaller tract is down here under the same ownership. And so what would...
Sir, I'm sorry, would you pull that microphone out and just
Here, I can point on
carry it with you? No, just pull the
Oh,
microphone.
all right.
There you go.
All right. So what we've got is the large tract here and the smaller tract here under the same ownership. The driveway of the current property cuts through that. And so we would relocate that driveway to the west. And that's going to allow this property to be...
Could just generally where it's going, because
Right.
some of us old timers remember when the driveway was all the way to that
Oh.
section line.
Technology. So it's this portion right here.
Okay.
So, and they've been working, with both neighbors on that transition of property.
The house that's gonna be next to it, there are no problem with it?
That's correct. The owners met with them as well as the property owner on the east multiple occasions to go over the driveway and the event venue.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any more questions?
Well, I've got a question. I'm concerned about, people with disabilities. You know, they rent venues for all kinds of events and weddings and that type of thing too. So, about that parking, thing, I really am concerned that it, whenever you get to planning and building, that it needs to, have plenty of accommodations for vehicles that would, accommodate people with disabilities parking and having access to the entire facility. So, kind of what are you thinking along those lines?
And they do have a plan to add some additional hard surface parking in order to provide enough for what the square footage of the barn, and with that's going to be handicap parking. That handicap parking is going to be located up near the barn, and there's going to have to be some additional adjustments to make sure access is available to the barn for that. But they do plan on putting in a number of handicap parking spaces. And then additional parking spaces by the house could also be used if there's more people that need to park up there with disabilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I've got a question about this proposed new driveway.
Yes, sir.
So will the property the property to the south and that property to the north that you pointed out, it's owned by somebody else? Is that what you're saying?
There's the property east, so you got the property on the east over here, and this portion right here are owned by the same owner.
Okay, and who is it? That owner is not the applicant?
That owner is not the
Okay.
applicant.
So-
And then there's a separate owner that has the house that's down
Okay.
here.
All right.
And so they're working on a deal, and they've got a deal put together to transfer some different pieces of land, which would include moving the driveway to this location as shown right here.
Okay, so
And-
it's not like an easement, or you're giving them an easement, but they're actually
They're actually transferring property.
transferring
yes, sir.
property. Okay, all right.
Are there any more questions? Is there anyone else who would like to speak for the proposition? If none, is there anyone here who would like to speak against the proposition? Is there any more discussion? More questions? If not, then I would accept a motion on the deferred item to possibly approve, deny a zoning change from AA agricultural and rural residential to a planned unit development PUD 2016-04.
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. DeFuria?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bond.
Aye.
We'll now go to agenda item number 8, discussion and possible action in regards to updating the Oklahoma County Master Plan. Tyler.
This is an item that was requested by the chairman, I believe, and, I believe, Eric has, had some presentation you wanted to make on that. Sorry to say he's not here. I have no excuse other than he may be forgotten.
I didn't have a presentation necessarily, but he just wanted an update on where we were with the master plan at this point. Basically, I guess probably the best thing to do is just kind of give a quick timeline of where we've been to this point. Basically, the county sent out a survey back in, it was towards the middle, end of 2014 to residents in the unincorporated Oklahoma County. Those surveys were returned at basically the beginning of 2014, beginning of 2015. We compiled those results. We made a report based on those results and presented that to the Planning Commission. At that point, one of the big concerns that we had was water quality and quantity out in the Deer Creek area. So we approached Oklahoma Water Resources Board for possibly a water study, and they directed us to ACOG, the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, to do that study. We had a meeting with them. There was going to be some time lag as far as them being able to start that project, and that lag kind of continues. From my understanding, I talked with ACOG towards the end of December of last year, and where they are at this point is basically calibrating their models and to start to go out to collect information out in the field. I put in a request to try to get an update this week, and I have not got a response to that, but that was one of the main things that we're waiting on to help guide us with the amendment of the plan.
Okay, maybe we could just say, to clarify things, our county engineer had a preliminary or had a study that said that the aquifer would not support our current 2-acre homes in the rural residential. There just wasn't enough water.
That basically came from the Water Resources Board and some work they had previously done, and that's why the ACOG study was very important to us, to verify what the Water Resources Board had said, because their study was, with Water Resources, wasn't that detailed. I mean, they did do some work, but not to the level ACOG is going to do it. It's disappointing that ACOG has not completed their work to this point. There is just one person at ACOG that does that work, and I guess he's been doing other assignments. The good thing for us is that work was going to be free, that maybe you get what you pay for. So we're looking into what it would cost if we would actually have to pay for a study, you know, that we would hire out in case that study never materializes. But the best information we have today, which is good information because it comes from the Water Resource Board, is exactly what you stated. But before you would actually put a master plan in place, based on that, I think I'd feel more comfortable if this very more detailed study was there to back that up.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. And so basically, since that time, one of the other items that has come up is the Eastern Oklahoma County Turnpike. And so one of the issues that was discussed at the previous meeting was some people wanting to rezone their property directly next to the turnpike or where the turnpike is gonna be ultimately built. So obviously, one of the discussions that the county has had through the infrastructure committee is actually building service roads. And so from my understanding to this point, the infrastructure committee has made a commitment to build those service roads, but that could be a long time period before those are actually in place and built. So obviously, if the county is willing to build service roads, you kind of expect some degree of development as far as commercial or industrial activities near that. So that's something else that has come into play recently that, you know, the delay is not something that we wanted, but, you know, addressing these issues, the delay has actually brought up new issues that we can analyze to include in the plan as well. So that's where we are right now. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Regardless of service roads, there's going to be interchanges. I don't know, what are there, 3 that are planned?
Yes.
Okay. So those are going to happen regardless.
Yes.
And that will precipitate, in my opinion, commercial development in those areas.
Right.
And some of those areas then may come in conflict with residential areas for people that went out there for peace and quiet. So is that I understand the service road issue, but with regard to updating a master plan to take into account the turnpike, I really think this body needs some direction and parameters.
Sure. And that's something that, you know, in the past we've done with public meetings. And so we've only had one public meeting to this point, basically with Deer Creek, because there was some issue. Well, no, actually we had 3 public meetings after the surveys were done, now that I think about it. But the Deer Creek was the main area where there was input that was brought in. And like I said, that was before the turnpike was announced. So, you know, I don't know if it'd be worth going as far as doing surveys again. I don't think that's really going to collect a lot of new information. I think people are still going to be in the same idea as far as development. You know, Deer Creek is big on not having development, you know, from the people that we've heard. And that's kind of the same thing in the other districts as well. So it might behoove us, if you will, to go out and do some other public meetings in the northeast or the east part of the county to see what type of feedback we get from, you know, proposing commercial along these service roads. That's one possibility. And I think basically we've waited to do that to see what type of information we get back from the water study, so we can do all those at the same time. We can have that discussion about the water study in Deer Creek, and then we can continue on and have the discussion about the turnpike and, you know, possible commercial industrial development that goes along with that to see what type of feedback we get on how to move forward.
Well, I think it would be helpful if we had an existing alignment, and I'm assuming it's somewhat complete now on the turnpike.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If we had that, and if we had then the intersections or the interchanges that we know are going to be in place, to see exactly how that property in that immediate area is currently zoned.
Well, I can tell you basically all those areas for the most part are zoned agricultural and rural residential.
Even on 23rd Street?
On 23rd Street, that's a little bit different.
Right. But the others I would tend to agree with.
Right. And most of 23rd Street through that area is not in our jurisdiction to begin with.
Okay. All right.
But, you know, nonetheless, you definitely want
But
to...
But there's 2 interchanges going to be back to the north from 23rd, is that your understanding?
Right. Britton Road is going to be one of them. And then back to the turnpike itself, 44.
Okay.
So, Eric, I've got a question. So from from I-40 to I-44, are there gonna be service roads on both sides of the highway, the whole length, or?
No, Oklahoma City, is your first jurisdiction coming off I-40, and they are not planning to build frontage roads. When we get in the unincorporated area, I believe around Southeast 29th, area, we are planning on building frontage roads. And then you get into the Herrick jurisdiction, so that's not our jurisdiction. So I don't know what they're gonna do. And then when you get north of 23rd Street, you're back into our jurisdiction. And I believe we had committed to 5 miles, but not the entire length to I-44.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, it's here on 29. Service road plot.
I think our jurisdiction is Reno to 29th, is that correct?
That's fairly accurate. I think it
20,
was,
Reno to 44th. Yeah. In our jurisdiction, Reno to 44th, we are planning on building frontage roads.
The gentleman in back here seemed to have some information he'd like to share.
No, I don't know.
Okay, just waving at us. Is there any more questions of Eric? Are there any more? Thank you very much, Eric.
sure.
We'll move on now to item 9, discussion and possible action to receive the January 2017 fee fund report.
You'll find that in your folder, on the back page there. Things seem to be going pretty good for collection of fees this year, well, the end of last year and the beginning of this year. And we're hoping that it maintains that steadiness. It's been a very good year.
Do we have a motion to receive the report? Do I have a second?
I'll make a second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. DeFuria?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bond?
Item number 10 is new business. That's any business that could not have possibly been foreseen prior to this meeting or of an emergency nature. Does anyone know of such a item?
I have none.
Moving on to our favorite, number 11 is adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second? You don't want the motion to die for lack of a second.
I second it.
Okay. Mrs. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. DeFuria?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner Bond?
All right.
We are adjourned.